Namaskara. Many of us, we are interested in the Sanskrit language. We take the classes, attend the classes, and we are interested to read and write in the Sanskrit language. In this video, we will talk about the steps or the process of writing in the Sanskrit language. So this will, based on my experience, I would like to share some tips of writing in Sanskrit language. Note that to study any language, there are four aspects or four dimensions which are listed here: listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Listening and reading, through these aspects, these are like the inputs. So one attains the knowledge, gets more and more, gets to know about the language more and more, like accumulating the vocabulary and the style and how to use it, the grammatical aspects, etc. So that is acquired through listening and reading. Now, the speaking and writing, these two aspects are the outputs. So, the knowledge one gets through listening and reading, they are expressed back through speaking and writing using that language. So, these four aspects or the four pillars or four dimensions of the language study, they are important. Now the lekhanam, as you see here, is logically put at as the last step here. The listening, that's how the study of a language would start, listening to the people who already speak that language. Then try to speak that language by imitating or by following how the other speakers are using that language. Then the reading part. Now get into the reading, the literature and the writings in that language, and then start writing. So when one sits down to write few sentences in that language, then one would start experiencing some challenges. It feels like there's a mental blockage. So the correct words or the correct words or correct forms of the words, correct grammatical forms wouldn't properly come to the mind quickly. So here there is a challenge here for writing. So here we'll discuss about some few tips here, how to start and continue and improve the writing, especially when it comes to Sanskritam. So here there are four steps or phases of writer or a writing in a language, and these steps are in general are applicable for any language. Now, first one is like a bhashantaranam or translation. Because this is a new language, one is not used to that language. The vocabulary or the collection of words could be very limited, and the style of usage could be very limited, and we don't know. I mean, we are used to, a new student or a new writer is used to think in a different language, his own mother tongue, or the language is used to thinking. Many of us, we are used to thinking in English language, so or our own mother tongues. So we first think in that language, and then we do the bhashantaranam or translation word by word. This is the phase one, first phase or first step. Then the second step is thinking in Sanskritam or the new language. We are talking about Sanskritam. So Sanskrita Bhashaya Chintanam, thinking in that language. Now this requires some additional skills or additional knowledge. So as one gets to, or as one continues to study the language, in the first step, one is just getting introduced to the language. So he might have taken the person might have taken the some introductory classes or some few classes, some like a camp. That leads to familiarization with the language. So then that starts the process of translation, bhashantaranam. Then as one progresses, studying the uh, writings or literature, or more and more interaction with other people who are already good at speaking or at the language, with interacting with them, one gets more and more collection of the language, not only the collection of the words, but also how the words have to be used and how a sentence has to be composed. So that knowledge builds up over a period of time. Then when one gets engrossed more and more familiar with the language, then the thinking in that language builds up. So that will replace the thinking which was happening at the stage of Bhashantaranam. So at that stage in the step one, the thinking was in a different language, maybe mother tongue or English or some other language. In the second step, that will start to change. So because one is already familiar with, or already uh, has got experience with the literature and the uh, other people who are already in that language, then naturally the brain starts constructing those uh, sentences by combining those words. Then the third step comes the padauchityam, or proper words. Now thinking is one part, then the padauchityam. Now these are again, as one gets more and more into the language, how here the depth is needed. The first two steps are like the um, more and more vocabulary and more of a grammatical usage, or whether that is correct or not. Now, padauchityam, not only the grammatically one should be correct, but padauchityam, proper words should also be used. Now, this requires a lot of the understanding behind the culture of that language. In the Sanskritam has been used in various different fields. So in those fields, in the different contexts, how the words are used. For example, there is a there are different words for water, like there is jalam, vari, ambu, etc. And there is also different words for agni. There are different words for akasha, or sky. Now these different words in different contexts, they bring a different meanings. So proper words, they need to be used. Then the fourth step here is the bhava, or spirit. Now this is again the next step when one gets into uh, like building the sentences and then building the uh, paragraphs, let's say. Then what is the uh, bhav, or the spirit he wants to bring behind that sentence? What does he want to convey? Whether he wants to convey like a hasyam, or whether he wants to convey like a serious something about something seriousness, or something which is like a uh, scary thing. So those spirits or bhava has to be rasa, what you call, that has to be brought. So to bring them, certain words make more sense, or if the sentences are constructed in a certain way, they uh, project a different effect on the readers or the listeners. So those are important. So that is the last step or the final step. So one can keep on improving on this further. So these are the basically at the high level 4 different phases in writing. Now to start writing in any language, some basic knowledge about that language is important, that is required. Now, in case of Sanskrit language, some basic knowledge about its Vyakaranam and the words that is needed. So without that, uh, it is not enough to start writing. So one would start listening and then try to start speaking and read also different, not only the literature, but also the grammar aspects, especially the Sanskrit being the ancient language. It is important to get proper knowledge through reading also. So here, uh, so generally, the general outline here is that one should have enough Shabda Sanchaya as the vocabulary, Shabda Sanchaya, Shabda Sangraha. So as the vocabulary, collection of words increases in the size, their writing would be better. And similarly, the Vyakarana knowledge, grammar knowledge, grammatical knowledge is also important. Sometimes some mistakes would happen, so that is a part of the process. So there is no need to worry about it, or there is no need to feel guilty about it. So one should start somewhere and keep on improving upon it. Then in the Vyakaranam, there are different aspects here. Sanskrit students would already know this. There is lingam, vibhakti, vachanam that should be taken care of. There is a visheshanam, vishesham, they should be in the same lingam, and there are some exceptions. So those one should be familiar with those kind of things. And then there is a different kriyapadas. There are different lakaras are used, karakas are there, sandhis are there, samasta samasas are there. So these are different aspects of the grammar. One should be familiar with. This is to begin with. Then when one starts writing, then in the advanced stages, this is the basic thing. In the advanced stages, then one could think about adding those rasa, bringing those bhava, etc. into the writing. Now, here are few things which are just generic in nature. Subject for writing, lekhana vishayaha. So when someone wants to write something, what they should write and how they that should be a little bit organized. One cannot just sit down and start writing random sentences without some thought. So there is some planning is needed, unless one wants to write some simple casual letter or something. But if someone wants to write a small paragraph or small essay or anything, so they have to have some idea in their mind, some plan. For example, so one can decide existing article or own article. So for a beginners, usually they can take up one existing article in some other language, and then they can try translating it into Sanskritam. That is the very basic thing one can start with. So there are some small essays would be available in other languages. So they can take that and they can translate it, small stories, etc. Then they can transition to own articles. So if they have, like, they can pick up any of the, for example, their events or their daily experience or their experience with the travel, experience in the school, experience at work, or some kind of how did they feel about a movie, or what is some current affairs or some festival, something they can think about some uh, some event or some subject, and then decide on that subject. Whatever the important thing is that one has to have a passion or interest in that subject. So then only the writing becomes more effective um, for the readers. The readers will they feel that the what the writer is trying to say. So the passion or the interest is important here. So when they write, decide on the subject, note down the thoughts. So as the thoughts come into mind, this may not be just like a 1 day work or like a 1 hour project. So it could span like multiple days or multiple weeks sometimes. Because these thoughts, when they come to the mind, sometimes they come randomly. So just note them down in some notebook. Then organize those notes properly, like chronologically organize them, and you may have to rearrange the notes. Some of them you don't want to, you don't like them, so rearrange them, and then properly decide on the overall like article, how it should look like, what is the subject, etc. Then start putting that into Sanskritam. So let's take some example of these phases and try to walk through these examples. For example, phase 1 was the Bhashantaranam, like translation. So in this case, let's take this one sentence I would like to translate. For example, there is a sentence here: I and my close friend visited a movie theater yesterday evening to watch a comedy. This is generally, if I'm using English language, I would like to put it in this way. But now if I want to translate this, I would like to convey this to somebody else. Now, in the first go, if I want to make a whole sentence using the Sanskritam, it would be difficult. So we need to break it down to smaller sentences first. Small sentences. This is the very important step for the beginners. I've seen that many times. The one who wants to write, they try to make us bigger sentences, longer sentences using complicated words unnecessarily. So it is very important to keep the sentences small. So a little bit of thinking pattern has to change. So it is like a change in paradigm or a thought process. So so many of the things which the way we are thinking in while forming the other, sentences using the other language need to be unlearned here. So that unlearning is important because the unlearning will help uh, in multiple ways. One is that we learn to think in a simple way, number one. Number two is that the next phase, it is important, thinking in Sanskritam language. So for that, lot of unlearning has to be done because the way the Sanskrit sentences have to be formed is a bit different than other languages. This is true for any other language also. So small sentences to begin with is very important. That is also this also goes with the principle called KIS or sometimes KISS, the KISS principle, right? The keep it simple or keep it simple stupid. That principle is applicable in many circumstances, and here also it applies. Keep it simple. There is no need to make difficult, complex sentences in the beginning. So if that English sentence, if I want to break it down, so what happens here is the base sentence here is what basic sentence I want or basic thing I want to convey here is I went to a movie theater. Now the question comes when? Yesterday. And yesterday also when? Evening. and then with whom, and my friend. I and my close friend. My friend who is also close to me. So these are the different components which are in this sentence. Then I want to say the movie was a comedy. Evening to watch a comedy. So if I break that sentence down further, I went to movie theater yesterday evening and my friend was with me and the movie was a comedy. So all these factors are there in the sentence. Now, so there are basically two sentences, smaller sentences. I went to movie theater, the movie was a comedy. And when and with whom are also additional things that can be added to the sentence here. Now at this sentence, at this phase, we are at the Bhashantaranam or translation. Now we can use English to dictionary, English to Sanskrit dictionary here. Since I'm making the sentence using English, so I would use English to Sanskrit. If there is any other language you would like to use, you can use that language to Sanskrit dictionary if it is available. Now, I went to a movie theater. If I can look up some English to Sanskrit dictionary, many are available online. So I would assume for I, one would know the word here called aham. Aham, movie theater which is Chitra Mandiram, they where the movies are shown. So Chitra Mandiram, aham Chitra Mandiram went. For the went I have the agacham as the verb here, kriyapadam. And when, yesterday, is a simple word hyaha. And then for the evening we have sayam or sayam kale. Then and my friend. For that my we have mama, friend we have mitram. For and we have cha. Cha we can add that. Now close. Now if we look at the dictionary, English to Sanskrit dictionary, they might say that close means pihitam or nibidam or samipam, like that. Now those are not properly fitting here. The mitra is not a samipa. If you actually put it like that, literally you can put word to word, then it will become mama samipam mitram cha, right? Mama pihitam mitram, so like that. But sometimes for the at the beginning stage it happens, which is okay. But again, that samipam, which is like near, here near is close, is not near. Here we want to make near, but it is used in a different way. Close to me. He is a close friend who is not physically close. Right? Mama mitram cha. So if you do not know the proper word for something, just leave it. We don't need to force it in this sentence. Just leave it, and then we'll just use mama mitram cha. That is enough for now. The movie was a comedy. Here, for the comedy, if you look up, again, different words can come up. What exactly we want to convey, that depends. So whether it was like a lot of was a comical movie, or was it ending in a good note? So that kind of thing. So what is that we want to convey? So depending on that, we can put that word here. The movie was a comedy. Chitram hasyamayam. It was comical. So we can put that hasyamayam if you hasya using for laughing. Hasyamayam, it was full of laughter, like that. So in the beginning stages, we can put like that. Chitram hasyamayam asit. So we have these two sentences. Aham chitramandiram agacham. Hyaha sayam mama mitram cha. Now we have these different parts of the sentence here. Now we can try to bring them together and make a sentence. Okay. So with those different words we have gathered, four different English words here. So what sentences we can form in Sanskritam? Let's see. So we have Aham Chitramandiram Agacham Hyaha Sayam. So that is the first sentence. So we have Aham Hyaha Sayam Chitramandiram Agacham. So this is the sentence we have. Now Mama Mitram Cha, we want to add that. Now if we add that Mama Mitram Cha in the first sentence, Aham Mama Mitram Cha Hyaha Sayam Chitramandiram, until that it is okay. But now if we want to use Agacham, we can't use, because Agacham is it's in the singular or ekavachanam. Aham and then mama mitram cha, that becomes a dvivachanam. So agacham cannot be used. Now we can find out what is the dvivachanam here. Agacham becomes agachava. But if it is a little bit complicated to use, or if you don't remember that agachava, that's fine. We can make another sentence here saying that Aham hyaha sayam chitramandiram agacham. That is the first sentence. Then we'll add tatra mama mitram api agachat, which means there my friend also came there. Okay. My friend also came there. So this is an additional sentence. We don't need to use the dvivachanam, so we can keep using the ekavachanam. So so what we are doing, we are breaking that sentence again into another sentence. So to keep it simple. So now the third one we can use again, which we already seen. Chitram hasyamayam asit. So this way we can break it down and make simple sentences to convey the message. Now, Bhashantaranam is okay. Translation, so that is the phase one. So as we start writing, we'll start using the translation, and then keep referring to this English, Sanskrit, or other language to Sanskrit dictionaries and putting those equivalent Sanskrit words in a sentence. But if we continue doing that forever, then we are not going to proceed to the next phases, because the translation will ruin a language. So that won't bring out the essence of the language or the style of the language. So if we keep on doing the translation, the very nature of that language will be destroyed. So in the first phase it is okay. So in the next phase we have to proceed to the next phase, that is Samskrita Chintanam. This is important. So as we progress through reading and speaking and writing, so here we come across the style of using Sanskrit language, how the words are formed, how the words are used in different contexts. So this comes with experience and time only. As one spends more and more time, as one invests more and more time in studying Sanskrit literature, one will get more and more familiar with that kind of usage. So now what happens is, in this transition phase, the thinking will start in the thought, in the mind. The Sanskrit word starts coming into picture or mind while forming the sentence in place of the mother tongue or the English language. So this transition is important. So this is a sign of Sanskrita Chintanam, or that we are getting more and more familiar with Sanskritam. Then when this transition happens, as this transition happens, one would tend to change their dictionaries also. Okay? Dictionaries. So previously one was referring to, say, English to Sanskrit dictionary. Now because the thought process has changed to Sanskritam, and one is reading more and more Sanskrit books, so there where one would not know the meaning of a Sanskrit word, then the reference book will be now Sanskrit to English or Sanskrit to other language dictionary. Okay. So this is a transition from English to Sanskrit reference to Sanskrit to English reference. Okay. Because we are the one is already familiar with many of the Sanskrit language words because the vocabulary has become strong. Now, when starts reading Sanskrit books now, there what happens? The many times the some of the Sanskrit words are new. Then the reference will be what one would do. They will go to the dictionaries which are Sanskrit to English dictionaries, and then they start finding out the meaning. So this is a very welcome change, very good progress here. And also the samasas or samastapadani, they are very popular in Sanskritam, very widely used. One has to be familiar with this. So when in the progress, in the timeline, this using the samastapada samasas, they bring out the beauty of the language of Sanskritam. So using the samastapadas also makes a sentence concise. Now continuing this our example, phase 3 is padauchityam, using proper words. Here, okay, somewhat our in the second phase our vocabulary got stronger by referring to by reading through more and more Sanskrit books and studying more and more. Now using proper words. Now in the previous example sentence it was aham chitramandiram agacham heha sayam. Now mama mitram cha was the word we found, and my friend. Now in that place we can use mama mitrena saha because this is the Sanskrit construct. Now that one becomes more and more familiar, we know that mitrena saha can be used. So in place of mama mitram cha, we'll put mama mitrena saha. Aham chitramandiram agacham hyaha sayam mama mitrena saha. So now here agacham will remain in the ekavachanam. No change, simple, but now it has instead of two sentences, tatra mama mitram api agachat, that was additional sentence. Now we are making it one sentence with mama mitrena saha. Now for close, now since again our vocabulary has increased, stronger, we can use priya mitrena saha. Aham chitramandiram agacham yaha sayam mama priya mitrena saha. So priya, which is like a who is my favorite kind of thing. Again, as we progress, we do not have to actually exactly match or keep on translating or thinking in the other language like English, but we'll stick with the Sanskritam, how these words are used in Sanskritam. So we'll forget about the other language. So as long as this Sanskrit sentence looks good and conveys the meaning, it should be good enough. So mama mitrena, mama priya mitrena saha agacham. So this can be used. Now in place of priya, there are other words. If one reads more and more, there could be like narma sakha, which means a very close friend. Narma sakha is there. Narma sakha. So those kind of words can also be used, but for general understanding, priya could be enough here. Priya mitrena saha. Now movie was a comedy. Here chitram hasyamayam asit. So, okay, but now if we want to make it better, then we can use hasya rasa pradhanam asit, prahasanam asit, or hasya rasa pradhanam. So the rasa there or the bhava there was mainly of hasya rasa or the comedy. So here chitram hasya rasa pradhanam asit, or if you want to say it was a good ending, we can say Sukhantyam asit, Chitram Sukhantyam asit. So different words can be used here depending on what we want to convey. Now in the next phase, keep on improving using the Samastapadam or the Samasa if one is familiar with, then the exploring more and more Sanskrit books. So the same example we can write as like Hasya Rasa Pradhana Chitra Darshanaya Hasya Rasa Pradhana Chitra Darshanartham Yaha Sayam Priyamitrena Saha Chitramandiram Gatoham. No, previously used Agacham, that is also okay, but Gatoham, these kind of usages are also popular in Sanskritam. So we can bring those also to make it more of a Sanskrit style, that language style. So where like another change we can make is, for example, there is a Mitriyana Saha or Priya Mitriyana Saha there. If you want to make it more concise, we can use Samitram. Is a Samastapadam asti. So that those kind of words can also be used. So Hasya Prasapradhana Chitra Pradarshanaya or Darshanaya Yaha Sayam Samitram Chitramandiram Gatoham. I mean, this is one example. There are again to say the same thing, lot of improvements, lot of ways could be there, but some overall steps are shown here. How one writer would progress from beginner level to a much improved level step by step. Dhanyavada.